You're going to jail, pal.
What is that? What do you think you have there?
You broke the law.
He shines in a way that is both quiet and strong in the vast sky of Hollywood heroes. He has made a name for himself in movies for more than 50 years with famous parts. John Carter, Indiana Jones, and Rick Deckard. Ford's reputation isn't based on glitz and glamour, but on accuracy, discipline, and a strong dislike of Hollywood's fake charm. Behind the cool exterior and smooth acts is a person who works very hard to be perfect. An artist who isn't afraid to get into arguments with coworkers who don't meet his high standards. His fights were never about ego, but about fundamental differences about professionalism and craft. This is different from many stars who thrive on fame and attention for not taking their work seriously enough, which requires discipline, preparation, and mutual respect. That's why Ford's words mean something when he says he'll never work with someone again. No one holds a grudge against them. This is proof of the high artistic standards he has upheld throughout his work. Today we look back at 6 actors whose disagreements with Harrison Ford were so big that they changed the plans of actors who might have worked together, showing how tough and determined one of Hollywood's most famous and mysterious figures is. First, Harrison Ford's broken friendship with Mel Gibson is at the top of the list of his most important problems. There was a fight that went beyond creative differences and got to the heart of how Hollywood is changing its rules for professionalism, personal behavior, and the lines between personal views and shared responsibility. The disagreement came up when several possible projects were being planned. Gibson's increasingly controversial public comments and troubling personal behavior made it hard for Ford to get around. Because Gibson is an actor who values control, courtesy, and respect on set, his behavior just didn't fit with his standards. During pre-production for a well-known action thriller, the stress reached a peak. Gibson's behavior outside of work started to seep into the creative space, destroying the trust and respect that Ford thought were necessary for working together well. Jerry Bruckheimer, the producer, got to the heart of the split. Harrison treats people with respect and honor at all times. Because of Mel's problems, that standard could not be kept up. It wasn't just that they were making different shows. They were coming from very different moral worlds. Things got worse when Gibson's public comments stopped possible cast members from joining the project. Ford saw these comments as unnecessary problems that were getting in the way of making the movie. His goals were no longer about himself or his art. It was about making sure the work itself was kept honest. Kevin Costner is second on the list. Their failed attempt to work together on a Western drama is now used as a lesson in Hollywood. It is often used as an example of how ego clashes can look like artistic differences. The fight started during pre-production. Both men wanted to be in charge of their roles, the plot, and the direction of the movie. Each person saw their work as a message about Western culture, so compromise wasn't working together, it was giving up. They both didn't want to take a back place. Ford wanted a story that was focused on the characters and looked at how violence on the frontier affected people's minds. For example, Cunner imagined a grand show with mythical grandeur and a story about America's westward growth. A director named Lawrence Kasdan said that Harrison wanted to look into what violence does to people's spirits. Kevin wanted to show the myth of progress in the United States. While reading the same script, they made 2 different movies. As things got worse, both stars asked for rewrites, and each change seemed to be meant to weaken the other's part. William Goldman, a famous screenwriter, said it was like a creative death spiral, where each draft made the 2 players less close to each other. The breaking point was a tense meeting about growth. Ford directly questioned Costner's understanding of what drives people, which was a harsh criticism. People who were there said it was one of the nicest but most painful fights in modern Hollywood history. The project came to a sudden and final end, when Costner sharply retorted that Ford was trying to turn an epic Western into a therapy session. Mike Oiz, who worked as an agent for both Ford and Costner, later said that their failed collaboration was like 2 real artistic ideas destroying each other because they didn't work together and were just plain stubborn. Julie Roberts is third on the list. Their sudden fight during a love drama project that has since been shelved shocked Hollywood. A lot of people thought that 2 of America's biggest stars would easily do miracles at the box office, but instead the match showed a lack of creativity that could not be fixed by rewriting. At the heart of their argument were 2 different ideas about how to act. Ford has always been known for its understated authenticity, a subtlety that gets its power from being careful. Roberts, on the other hand, exudes performative charm, which is a style that demands attention and interaction. Their approaches didn't work well together, which made it impossible for them to develop a strong love relationship. Later, director Mike Nichols thought, Julia's charm works at a frequency that needs to be noticed and responded to. Harrison is interesting because of what he hides and doesn't show. Two instruments trying to play the same song in two different keys was like that. The split got worse during rehearsals. Roberts didn't feel supported by Ford's calm responses, and her efforts to get things going only made Ford pull even further into his natural reserve. The breaking point happened during a very important love scene. Instead of sparks, the camera caught a void that was so deep that photographer Sven Nykvist called it an extreme lack of chemistry. It was almost interesting to see. In retrospect, Ford would say that working with Julia Roberts was more like putting on a show than playing against a character. Roberts, for her part, was upset that Ford didn't seem emotionally present even when he was acting. Their disagreement showed how truly different their approaches were. Tom Lee Jones is fourth on the list. Their fight in The Fugitive has since become one of the most talked about cases in Hollywood of what can happen when two strong personalities meet. There was never any doubt that they respected each other, but that wasn't enough to get them to work together differently. Ford planned out every scene very carefully, making sure he knew the beats and flow of each character. Jones, on the other hand, liked things to be unpredictable and played in a way that made every take unpredictable. The result was magic on screen, but behind the camera, tension built up, making both guys mentally tired. During their first big confrontation scene, the rift became clear. Ford had to keep adjusting his performance because Jones's approach changed all the time. Director Andrew Davis said it all so well. Tommy played each scene like a jazz piece, switching up the beats and accents every time. Harrison had to have steady beats to make his story arc. It seemed like they were making two different movies, even though they were both very good. Jones started changing line deliveries in the middle of a scene, which messed up Ford's timing and started heated arguments about professional politeness and how to work together as a team. What people saw on the screen was an exciting fight between two big-name stars. Behind the camera, though, that same energy made the relationship one of the hardest on Ford's mental health of his whole career. When Ford and Tommy Lee Jones got into the famous tunnel fight, things really got heated. Jones's unpredictable improvised energy made it hard for Ford to keep up his precise style. What should have been a controlled performance turned into a fight of rhythm and focus. Sean Young is number 5 on the list. Ford may have had the most difficult psychological struggle of his career while making Blade Runner. What started out as a professional working relationship turned into a cautionary tale about what can happen when you push method acting to its limits and how unclear lines can make working together into a fight. The disagreement began during practice. For Ford, keeping character work on the screen was more important than letting Young fully immerse herself in the part of Rachel. Later, director Ridley Scott said, Sean always lived in character, so Harrison was never really sure if he was talking to the actress or the replicant. Ford, who liked things to be clear and kept a professional distance, found this attitude very unsettling. Young's behavior started to show up in their off-camera interactions, making things worse. Ford felt that the line between their personal and work lives was blurring, which was not comfortable. The tension was at its worst during the romantic parts of the movie. Because Young was so intense, what should have been chemistry between the actors turned into strange tension. The cinematographer Jordan Cronenweth put it simply, it was the most awkward work relationship I've ever seen. Ford himself would say years later that the experience had a lasting effect on him and changed how he worked with actors who were very method-driven in the decades that followed. Ford himself said that working with Sean Young was like crossing a psychological minefield. This showed how deeply uneasy he was with her methodical approach. Shia LaBeouf is 6th on the list. In Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Harrison Ford met Shia, whose energy was hard to predict. This was one of the most dramatic moments in Hollywood's age gap. Their work together was more than just a clash of egos. Two very different ways of thinking about acting came together. Ford was standing on one side. He was the picture of old-school professionalism. He was exact, disciplined, and based on structure. LaBeouf, on the other hand, was part of a new wave of exploration. He gave his work a raw, exploratory style. From the first practice it was clear that these two styles would not work well together. Vic Armstrong, who was in charge of the stunts, said it best. Harrison treated each scene with the care of an expert. Shia treated every moment like she was digging up her feelings. They were working with two different ideas of what actors should do, and the set quickly became rough all over. The conflict got worse when LaBeouf's methodical intensity started to bother other cast members, which Ford saw as causing needless chaos in a place that needed order. The breaking point happened during a very important scene between a father and son. Ford had to stop the scene because Shia was adding to it on the spot. What people who were there afterwards said was a battle between professional restraint and young rebellion. Frank Marshall, the director, said that Ford's comments after the auction made his feelings very clear. This wasn't a partnership he planned to keep up. There is a thin line between being committed to your character and being committed to chaos, and Harrison Ford won't stand for the latter. On set, the tension got so high that Ford looked relieved when LaBeouf's scenes were over. One old crew member said that Ford looked like a man who had just weathered a storm. It was fierce, enthralling, and completely exhausting. Ford made his point clear in the end. There was no movie that was worth giving up the professional and respectful standards that had made his career what it was. When Ford told studio leaders directly about his worries about Gibson, that was the last straw. People who work in Hollywood said it was one of the most ethical turnsdowns in recent memory. A strong statement against putting up with hatred. Ford's alleged words were important. He couldn't work with someone whose bad behavior put everyone else on set at risk of losing their job. It wasn't a battle of egos or artistic ideas, it was the right thing to do. It was easy for Ford to understand. Real innovation can only grow in a place where everyone respects each other. No project, no matter how big or complicated, can last if that respect is broken. Ford's conflicts over the course of his career show that he was an artist who always put craft above business and honesty above ease of use. His decisions bring out a truth that isn't often seen in Hollywood. As a professional, you have to know when to walk away, no matter what. Sign up now to get more stories and secrets from behind the scenes of Hollywood.